Welcome to another episode of the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Lori Rivers, and today we're talking about Venus in Capricorn. And there you hear the lovely ding of the Discord server. That thing is popping all day, all night long, with members from the Patreon who are responsible for making this podcast possible, which is why we have the patron shout outs every single episode. Before we get talking about Venus retrograde, I want to talk about a couple of things. We're going to have a new question answer segment with questions from patrons, some of which are covered in Coffee with Lori, which all patrons, regardless of tier, get access to. We do that once a month, where people get to come have coffee with me on a Sunday morning, my time, Pacific, 11 a.m. Not too early for me. I'm not a morning person. And we also take questions in from the Discord, from the patrons as well. So I've got a couple of that for our new segment. And then a big shout out to all of you for making this podcast hit the top of the U.S. podcast charts for religion and spirituality. I guess the first time we hit the charts was October 21st, 2021. I had no idea because I never look at numbers. And according to the Spotify podcasting Wrapped, 614 of you listened to this more than any other podcast. I am amazed because, as you know, I don't really edit this puppy and I talk into my phone most of the time. I do have a fancy schmancy mic and I can edit audio like a beast, but I don't tend to. This is a very organic space where I let my Venus and Gemini ramble. So thank you. That's what I got to say about that. Thank you. So let's get to Venus in Capricorn, because she's going to be there for a long, long time. All right. The moon is in Capricorn as I record this, just minutes away from the 6th of December. It's late at night. And the 6th is my day off. So I'm going to try to get this published before I go to bed. And I'm hoping to have a lovely day relaxing, which should be possible because the moon won't be conjunct Venus till later in the evening, which isn't a bad thing at all. It'll be a little intense because it's Capricorn, but hopefully I'll be relaxed or creating, or usually I do some writing late at night on Mondays because I tend to do things like shopping. But this time everything is going to square my moon. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll be in bed. That would be good. Bawling my eyes out is not what I really want to do, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll let you know. There's a lot of information running around TikTok and YouTube about this Venus transit by some very promising astrologers, but they're regurgitating some really oversimplified information, especially when it comes to the retrograde period. So I thought before we talk about what this lunation is going to do, let's talk about the pre-retrograde period. It is not the pre-shadow. You do not have a pre-shadow. You have a shadow period. Okay? It is not a pre-shadow. It's just not. Okay? Basically, on the forward motion before a retrograde, you're freaking oblivious. Okay? You're just going to be oblivious no matter how much you try to pay attention. Okay? The pre-retrograde is on the speed, the velocity of the apparent transit. Okay? It's about the optical physics involved. It is not about conscious understanding. Okay? Or there would be nothing to gain out of the retrograde. The retrograde period is a time for reassessing, taking a look, researching, looking for again, okay? And then you move through the shadow on the direct motion, where you cover that ground with what you've learned during the retrograde. Number one, are retrogrades bad? No, they're not. They're not bad. They're not malefic. In fact, in traditional astrology, all it meant is you're looking at things. Again, you're just taking a look at things. Nobody said it was bad. All right. All these people love to hype this crap up, and it pisses me off because it panics people. All right. There's no reason to be worried about this. None. Okay? None. Will some of it be intense? Yes. Yes, it will. It has more to do with Venus's proximity to Pluto than it does the retrograde. These semantics matter, and they matter a lot. Okay? If you want to talk about astrology, you have to understand the difference between the various things happening. Okay? There's a difference between the retrograde and the conjunction between Venus and Pluto. Those are two energies operating at the same time, but they are separate energies. All right? Train your Mercury. Critically think. Use your mind. So, I want to talk to you a little bit about what the retrograde actually means. Okay, and then we'll talk more about Venus in Capricorn. But Joanne Wickenburg, who I studied with back in the 2000s, Joanne Wickenburg is the foremost expert, in my opinion, and the one who's written and taught on retrograde planets more than anybody else, and she's a founder of frickin' Kepler College. So, I have her book recommended up on my blog. If you go to my blog at wokeastrology.com, you will find the 10 beginning and beginning intermediate books that I recommend. And these are books I have either used to learn from in my early days, or I have recommended to students after reading them, okay? And I think there's like The Idiot's Guide to Astrology is the only one I didn't learn to use from, but I found it when I started teaching, and I would use it for my very, very novice students because I felt it was a very good introduction. Beyond my own astro guides, these are the books I'm recommending until I rewrite some material, such as planetary transits, etc., because we need new interpretations, and I specialized in interpreting. So, let's look at what Joanne has to say about retrogrades, okay? Retrogrades are, in Joanne's experience and opinion, and she has a pedigree, okay? She studied with Dane Rudhyar, who was a major metaphysician and astrologer. He passed away before I became an astrologer. He passed away in the 80s, but he was a powerhouse of a thinker and a mind with his own amazing lineage. So, Venus is about our values and what's important to us. It's not just love and money. That is oversimplified, okay? It's what is as important to you as breathing. You need it as much as you need oxygen. It's what you need to attract to yourself to feel secure and safe, viable, and alive, okay? For some people, it is identity and principles. For other people, it is nourishment and physical security. For other people, it is communication and ideas and mental stimulation. For other people, yet, it is emotional, okay? Emotional nurturing and being nurtured, being nurturing. Self-expression in all forms. And large demonstrations, demonstrative affection, demonstrative wealth, for some people. Other people, it's about healing, tending, healing, as far as offering healing, receiving healing, details and order. Other people, yet, it's about finding the balance. It's about mutuality, fairness, creativity, collaboration. Those are things you need, like breathing, or you feel insecure. Another, is deep soul connections, transmutation, transformation, change at a deep-rooted level, soul bonding. Another could be adventure and stimulation, constant stimulation, learning, new experiences, new experiences, constant gaining, and travel can include that. Stable material wealth. It could be stable foundations, empire building, power, authority, control, but really stability, foundations, strong foundations, innovation, eclectic, a variety of interests, gadgets, technology, community, and spirituality, emotional connectivity, a blending of sorts, deep spiritual connections, faith in self, faith in the other, belief in oneself and other. Those are all ways we feel secure. Those are all descriptions of Venus through the various signs. Notice I didn't tell you what sign. Do your homework, get my Astro Guide, get the volume 1, issue 1. Okay? So, let's take a look at what Joanne has to see about what Joanne has to say about Venus retrograde. Now, she and I don't necessarily always agree on all of the interpretations, but again, in my opinion, she is far more expert than many. So, when we're looking at a transiting retrograde Venus, according to Joanne, it's important to understand the cyclical pattern of Venus in order to fully comprehend the full import of its retrograde transit. All right, so there are different levels of the retrograde process, okay, in its cycle. So is it in the Lucifer or is it the Hesperus? Okay. And honestly, I haven't done the calculations on this one, but I will, and I'll talk to you about it in another episode, because we've got till March, folks, with Venus in Capricorn. So maybe in the next episode. But so realize that just prior to the time that Venus turns retrograde, it's theoretically out of bounds. I'm reading from her book. As it transits the degree at which it will later make its direct station, it begins to function beyond your ability to consciously direct its energy. Once it makes its direct station, you are challenged to cease moving forward in your desire to acquire more for yourself. Stop to assess whether what you want is in harmony with what you need to enhance your life. So it's a reassessment of values, right? So when it goes out of bounds, which is what most people mean by the pre-shadow period. So like it's right before. We're not there yet. We're almost there. Once it's in we'll get to that pre-retrograde very, very shortly. And what that is where we are looking, what do we want to accomplish? Now, with Venus in Capricorn, we're looking at what we want to attract into our lives that makes us feel very physically secure. A lot of people are going to be looking at tangible forms of wealth. This is empire building energy. It's also physical security. It has to do with owning land, infrastructure, buildings. And then you want to look at the house it's transiting, if it's the first house, you're looking at your own security, your own stability. As a person, your own personal agency and power. If it's the second house that Venus is transiting, then you're looking at your physical resources, tangible. This is the house of money. It's also the house of love. Okay, seventh house is not love. It's partnership, but it's not love. Love is acceptance. Love is security. And so it's committed, all right? Committed to self. It's assessing your own value. It's your self-worth as well. And so a lot of times with people with Capricorn in the second house, they're looking for proof of their value, often associating that with productivity. You may not be as productive because you may be needing to learn that your value is inherent. You may be looking at new ways of bringing in wealth to yourself and building that. So we've got, let's say, the third house is communications. How you're communicating, what you're communicating with, building communication systems. It can be transportation and cars and things like that. But it's really probably your ideas and how you communicate those. It won't be anything close to a Mercury retrograde. It's attracting the right communications, wanting the right connections, finding the right words, and getting some writing done. If you've been having projects you're delayed on, the retrograde will be a time to complete those. Actually works in your favor. I, for one, am happy about that because that's exactly where it's sitting in my chart. Fourth house is hearth and home, and so it's about creating stability in the home. You may feel like your stability is rocked and that you have to reassess what it means to have stability in your family or your house. You may have actual issues with foundations, basements, things like that. Fifth house is creativity. It's procreation and recreation. That's the house of dating and romance. It's also the house of children. There's stuff going on there. And so it's, if you're trying to get pregnant, you may be trying in different ways. There might be delays on that, but it doesn't mean that. It might be it's time to try again. Don't try too hard. Putting your focus on it too hard can often delay it. If you're an artist, this is the time to reassess what you need to get whatever project you want done. Sixth house is work, health, and service. So you're looking at your JOB and your routine and your health. And so you might be looking at your job and what kind of compensation you want out of that. And you may be needing to renegotiate that, etc. We move to the seventh house, the partnership and mutuality. Partnership and mutuality. Then we have, and that could be relationships of all kinds, best friends, ride and die partners, significant others, etc. And that would be of all kinds. Anybody you have a commitment to, you might be reassessing what that commitment looks like and how you want to commit. It doesn't mean you're ending anything, folks. It does not indeed. It's about renegotiating contracts and looking at what's important to you there. Eighth house can be a little crunchy. It's often how we process grief. Now, with Venus going through, it's not necessarily malefic, but it is looking at, about how we transmute things. And you're looking at attracting new occult knowledge, so uncovering some hidden mysteries and re-looking at things. You might be looking at new tarot cards. You might be looking at universal symbolism in new ways. It could be a whole bunch of stuff up on deck. It could be inheritances being reviewed and wills being reviewed, or your taxes. It's tax season, so that makes sense. And again, don't treat it like a Mercury retrograde. Don't even think about it like that. Ninth house, you may be reinvestigating and looking at going back to school or starting a new program or completing something. You may have had foreign travel plans that get delayed because of COVID. Doesn't mean you won't ever travel again. Just means you may have to reassess some of those plans. 10th house is career, and does not mean you're going to lose your job. You may be looking at how you're putting yourself out there in the world, and that might change a little bit. You might be reassessing your authority, maybe owning up to it a little bit more. You might be looking at where you hand your power away and where you need to accept it. 11th house is hopes, dreams, inspiration, aspiration, groups, associations, and community. This is going to be looking back over those epiphanies and kind of searching through the dark for a little bit of light, finding new hope, reassessing old ideas and epiphanies to renovate them and rejuvenate them. Go back through your old notebooks and your journals. It might even be a time that you're looking at your groups and associations. You might need to refresh your networks and your groups of friends. Does not mean you throw the old ones out, but you may be looking, or you might be even getting reacquainted with old friends, people you grew up with. Maybe you haven't seen people in a long time. That's what's up on deck. 12th house is our connection to the all that is, to the divine. The 12th house is how we connect in spiritually, and you may be recreating rituals, looking for a deeper connection, looking for some hope and faith in a different way. Not the hope of the 11th house, but the faith, the deep faith of the 12th house, your connection to your spirit guides. You may be, maybe your old rituals aren't working and you have to give them a tweak or two. It might be a time where you're reassessing what you need for comfort in order to ease that those fears that sometimes come that are based in reality, because we need to be a little less realistic moving forward. Reality doesn't always help us very much when we want to create new things, and understanding that sometimes the intangible is as real as the tangible. So that's what's up on deck with that through the houses as per Venus retrograde in Capricorn. We'll be doing more about this in the next Cosmic Surfers, which will come up in, I gotta look. I'm not teaching on the 12th. Let's take a look. We'll probably take a look at the 19th for Cosmic Surfers and Living by Luna. And then I am teaching, I'm offering the seminar. It's not really teaching, but I'm giving you the overview of 2022 on Sunday, December 26th, the day after Christmas. We're going to take a look at the astrology of 2022 when I go through the 12 months that we are up against. Oh my God, that sounded ominous. Let me step that back a minute. That we get to skip through. Or slip through, because it's a slip and slide. 2022 has a very different energy. In some ways, it's still got the Saturn-Uranus square attached to it. But this time, it's kind of through an oil slick. So we'll be talking about that on the 26th. If you're a patron, keep your eye on those emails, because you've been getting discounts left, right, and center. Take advantage of those. They go away. You have your own very special discount on transit readings that cuts, it's a 55% discount on those half-an-hour readings. Don't think the time is important. I can answer your astrological questions in about 15 minutes and get you information that'll change your life. I don't charge for my time. I charge for my experience. So I'm giving you guys a gift for Christmas. Make sure you take advantage of it because that discount goes away on the 26th. All right, so now let's talk about Venus in Capricorn and what it means. Let's really look at what Venus in Capricorn means. Because Venus is about our values, and Venus in Capricorn is about finding stability, finding groundedness, finding our authority, knowing our power, true power within ourselves, and wherever that falls in the houses. So I talked about that already. It is conjunct Pluto, and that means our values collectively on a mundane level. Okay, all of us. And we're all tied to the collective consciousness, even when we choose to be highly conscious. We are all human beings, and we are all tied to the collective human experience. Our values will be shifting and transforming. A lot of what we've believed to be right and true and the way things work and the way the world works will be forever transmuted through this process. Now, that too sounds ominous. There's some things that will be very ominous. There's going to be some people and some leaders that people have looked up to who are going to fall from grace. And I think some of that will come out of the Ghislaine or Ghislaine Maxwell trial. Some of that. But there's going to be other scandals as well. We're going to see some rhetoric and indoctrination meet the litmus test and be found wanting. We're going to see infrastructure issues and the need for infrastructure repair, because there's going to be some pretty spectacular failures. And I'm talking about physical buildings, bridges, etc. A lot of what people believe is true and right about the systems, that they're still not awake. There'll be another mass awakening because the collective values will be shown to be in need of change. And it will also be very much a time where women need to stand up and fight for their right to autonomy, which starts in health, but it ends in independence because of the repercussions of women's health on their lives. And we cannot, if people still think leaders are going to protect them or advocate for them, they're going to see that they don't, and that women need to take action on a mass level, more than marches, but being involved. And I think we're going to see a lot of women filing to run for office. I certainly hope so. People like Stacey Abrams, who's running for governor. Is she perfect? Probably not. But at least she puts her money where her mouth is, and she puts her actions behind it. We need more people like that. There isn't anyone who's perfect. However, there's a lot of masquerading out there, and the masks will be coming off. We're going to, again, see some changes in power dynamics. Now, this could be multiple world leaders losing position through a variety of means, whether it's illness, accident, voting out, votes of no confidence, or even political actions through dissent. So we're going to see quite a bit of things. Are we going to see a war? No, we will see saber rattling. We will see saber rattling. But honestly, with COVID and climate change, the world won't have time for too much armed conflict because we're going to be battling those things. There's going to be a lot of corporate scandals. We may see heads of corporations falling as much as we see politicians falling. And not always the people we're thinking of. It's going to be interesting to find that information. Citizen journalists are going to be very, very important. Okay, we're probably going to see some whistleblowing. we're certainly going to see reports. So these are all things that are going to come up with Venus in Capricorn in the mass consciousness. And again, I'm going to be writing more about that on Patreon, and talking about it in Living by Luna and Cosmic Surfers, about how we can monitor our own understanding of our values as Venus conjuncts with Pluto. It's a serious thing on a personal level, because Capricorn is serious energy. It is. It's foundational. It is literal foundations. It is our own authority. And Venus and Pluto are meeting up. There's going to be transformation. And sometimes that's gritty. Sometimes it is. But it's necessary. And it isn't easy, but it's always beautiful at the end, those types of changes. And on a personal level, this is a very powerful thing. So I want to do some patron shout outs, and I want to thank my patrons for a very special year. And then we will talk about what we can do with Venus in Capricorn on an individual level, about how to make the most of this energy, because yes, we can set intentions on the 10th through the 13th, which is when Venus and Pluto will be conjunct, and we can do it again on the 22nd through the 22nd through the 26th, when she's retrograde. And then we can do it again on March 3rd, because each step of those intentions is a step towards manifesting with our hands. And we'll talk about what manifestation is and how to work with that. And then we'll do the segment where I cover some of the questions we did in Coffee with Lori, because, oh my God, I didn't get it recorded. This is what happens when I start drinking coffee at the Coffee with Lori instead of come in caffeinated. I forget to hit the damn record button. So I'm going to answer the questions that I can recall, and I asked a couple of my patrons to help me find the questions I answered, because I know I'll answer them again. So we'll do that. And so let's get to the patron shout outs, because without them, this podcast doesn't happen. Well, big thank you to all of my patrons, and all of you who have been my patrons. I don't blame anybody from not, if you can't be a patron for a while. I get how budgets work, and I want to thank you for being patrons, both present and in the past. We've got some new patrons. We constantly grow, which is super exciting. I don't know, did I tell you guys that I am now a Patreon ambassador? I'm going to be finding out tomorrow what that means. I'll talk about it on the next episode. So let's take a look here. We have Hudsa. We have Sherry S., Riley Barber, Charlotte, Dana, Denise, Sabrina, Shelby, Lizeth, Jackie, Layla, Molly, Nora, Francesca, Brandy, Ann, Veronica, Parker, Carrie, Amy, Liz, Nicole, Lindsay, Jeanette, Rebecca, Cheryl, Talia, Deborah, Jimmy, Ryder Rains, Cindy, Anna, and Saffron. And when we take a look at the Discord, it's pretty busy. We've got a bunch of things hopping in the holiday venting channel. And I'm not going to read off these, because sometimes people are talking about family stuff and I don't want to out anybody. But we've got some active venting going on. People dealing with the world and COVID and family and dynamics, and it's a place to vent. And remember, there's a difference between trauma dumping and venting, and I wanted to give a place for people to feel safe to vent, because in my rules it says no trauma dumping, because I think sometimes people feel so connected and so safe that they'll kind of treat our Discord like a therapy session, and it's not fair to everybody there. Everybody has issues there, and none of us are therapists. Well, there may be a few therapists in there, but they're not your therapist. But you can certainly vent, and there's a huge difference. And so I've made that safe space for people to vent of like, oh God, I've got to go to the holidays, etc. By the way, it's 12:22 a.m. A little bit of magic. There's more going on. I want to thank everybody, absolutely everybody, for supporting the podcast. I can't believe that it's as widely listened to. We've got 60 countries tuning in. I'm going to say thank you in as many languages I can think of. Let's say danke schön, merci beaucoup, tusen tak, shukran, shukriya, thank you. I don't remember any. Oh, shen shen. I try to remember. That's all I can remember right now. But thank you very much. I'm super excited. I I'm overjoyed that so many of you enjoy what I have to say as I ramble along unedited on this podcast. If you're not a patron, that's okay. But do feel free to join us. That Discord is hopping, and patrons will get the first looks at the Awake Space, a modern mystery school. We've got some exciting developments coming on that. That is going to be launching in January, but it's going to be launching to patrons only. So Living by Luna and Cosmic Surfers will have their libraries of material. Astro Adventurers are going to have some beginning astrology resources in there. But not a ton, because we already do the forecasts. That's really the every 2.5 day forecast, which is a lot. It's a lot of work to get those out. I try to get them out to on time, and that's why I've taken the first week off of January. I'm going to try to get ahead of myself on content and get that mystery school going as well. But I've got some ideas for new ways of serving you guys, and a possible new patron tier. So stay tuned for 2022, because there's some cool stuff coming. But once again, a very heartfelt thank you. I am absolutely honored to have had this podcast be ranked in the top 40 of religion and spirituality podcasts in the United States. That is a very big honor, and it is thanks to you. So thank you. All right, let's get on with the rest of the episode. All right, so what does Venus in Capricorn mean for us as people? So if we're manifesting, we're shaping with our hands, and you're manifesting every single frickin' day, every moment. And the last time Venus was in Capricorn was 2013, 2014, and that was December to January of 2013 and 2014. Kind of like we're doing this time around. And I'm feeling a little emotional. I went and I looked up when the last time was, because I couldn't remember. And I was making some really what felt like huge decisions back then. And I was taking a leap in my business as a business developer and coach. I was helping people build online businesses because I knew it was very important for people to be independent as we moved towards 2020 as an astrologer. But where I lived, it wasn't very good to be a public astrologer. And so I did business development coaching, teaching for online stuff. By the way, all the planets that rule astrology rule the internet. So used to be astrologers were also computer geeks back in the day. But, and many use the internet now, right? But anyway, and in fact, it was at this networking group I had joined that was an hour and a half away from my home, where one of the people who attended, as she was a graphic designer, she came up to me, and there was no way to identify that I was an astrologer. I was wearing a black suit with a white blouse. I can remember exactly what I was wearing it was a lunchtime BNI meeting, Business Networking International. And I had a pin of a moon with a star, but on a lapel. But that did not make me an astrologer. It was no astrological group pin. It was just a cosmetic jewelry pin. And she walked up to me and she said, "You're an astrologer." And I said, "You're psychic." And I said, we need to take this conversation to a corner because I'm not public about this and I don't want to lose credibility as a business developer. And she was like, "Sure." And she was like, "Hey, I'm the president of the Washington Astrological Association, and I think you're a really good astrologer." And again, you don't know anything about me, but once again, you're psychic. I am. And I said, "Well, I haven't been involved in any groups since the early 2000s. I walked away from the professional world. I'm not happy with interpretation and people wouldn't listen to me, and I'm tired of the boomers and don't want to deal with their organizations." And she wasn't a boomer. She was younger than me. She was a millennial. And she said, "Yeah, but we need teachers like you." And I'm like, "All right." And so I went to a workshop that they were putting on, and Robert Hand was there, and I hadn't seen him in a long time. And I got the chance to argue with him about house systems and stuff. And it was a beautiful argument. It wasn't an angry argument. It was a wonderful professional discussion, which we both enjoyed. He's a Sagittarian. And anyway, so that was 2014. And that was actually exactly during that retrograde when I went to that workshop. Fascinating. Because I'm about to start the mystery school in 2022. And I'm about getting all the materials together and getting the artwork together. And I feel a little emotional because I was taking stretches in my business out of a calling. Because, again, I was not public as an astrologer for multiple reasons. And that is because in my early professional days, I attracted some of the weirdest clients in the world, and I just didn't want to deal with it. They're probably all QAnoners now. And so I worked only on referral. And some of my business clients absolutely took advantage of me being an astrologer, and we built some crazy cool businesses. I hired a money coach for myself because I had disenfranchised myself from money. And that really sucked. But it's because of experiences I had as a young woman. So those were all things that happened for me. What happened for you in 2013, 2014? Go back and think about it. Like I said, it was very emotional for me to make this awareness just now because numbers-wise, I'm doing what felt was almost impossible. Back then, I was unsupported by family by my spouse, even by friends, even by friends, because I was pushing the limits of their understanding of what was possible. That was hard. It was hard. It's hard to go through. And I felt very alone. And I couldn't be in a much more different space now. I don't feel unheard. I don't feel alone. Thank you, because you're part of that. See, here my Cancerian self is poking out. Get a little weepy. I could say it's late. I could make excuses, but the fact is it's overwhelmingly beautiful to be here. So if you're struggling right now, deep breaths. You won't always struggle if you take your consciousness into your own hands and you make choices. Brave choices. I was very lucky. Well, I've always been very lucky when I've been self-determined. Venus in Capricorn values your stepping into your own authority. And when she goes retrograde, you will see with no shadow of a doubt how you give your power away. And if you can be honest with yourself and you can see where you hand it off and you let other people's opinions stop you, what other people think about you, color how you do things in life. The expectations others have set for you, whether positive or negative, where you haven't set them for yourself, you will see how you have diminished your own authority. But it's not to judge yourself. Just recognize it, see it, spot it, and then you have a choice. You can keep doing the same thing that isn't working out for you, or you can change direction. And that is what retrograde is to our perception. It is changing direction. Back in 2014, I recognized where I had got the fuck in my own way, where I could blame the spouse that was neglectful. I could blame my friends and family who didn't support me, or I could choose to support my fucking self. And I crawled further out of the hole. You have to remember, I had only gotten to 0 clinical markers in 2012. I had spent a lifetime healing, and people were trying to keep me in the form they knew me in. They wanted to tell me that I was still fragile, and they wanted to tell me that I was still wounded, and they wanted to tell me I was still fucked up. But I wasn't, and I knew it, and I had proof because I'd been tested, because I'd been monitored. I spent 5 years cleaning up a lifetime of a mess. Now, it was a 30-year journey, and as I said to Dr. Silva, who, not the famous one, but my Dr. Silva, who has since passed away, he was in his 80s, when we did the original diagnosis that had me off the charts for post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression, I laughed and I said, that's it? Because I sure as hell had a whole lot more wrong with me when I was in my 20s and early 30s. I've already done a lot of healing. I was a very embattled person from a lot of trauma. The reason I don't tell all of my story is, again, I don't like triggering people. But rest assured, I know what it's like to walk through hell and come out the other side. It's gritty, it's hard, and it's worth it. And that is the authority of Venus in Capricorn. She is a strong goddess. She is made of the earth. She is made of bone and steel. She bends and does not break. She is the joints in our body, and she gives us range of motion. And she tells us that we are queens or kings and emperors and empresses. And that's the energy you want to take on. And that's what you want to review when she goes retrograde, because we are collectively transmuting our power. And so what if you made shitty decisions in the past? So the fuck what? Make better ones now. Make good ones now. Make healthy ones for you now. Make the boundaries for you now. And you get to reassess them and make them again. You know what? I didn't go around to everybody telling them my boundaries. I decided what my boundaries were, and when they got breached, I made a decision on how I would proceed. But I didn't sit there going, this is my truth and you people need to treat me this way. I stopped telling people what I was going to do. I just started doing it. I started putting myself forward. I didn't even tell people about my accomplishments. I still do that today. I will just keep going, and unless somebody asks, I don't tell them. And that's people close to me. If they ask how I'm doing, I'm doing pretty good. I don't tell them about my wins. I don't tell them about my losses. I just do it. Because honestly, it's nobody's goddamn business except mine anyway. Nobody's. As far as my business goes, it's nobody's business except mine. I might share it with the people who are supporting me. People who are helping me out. I'll be like, oh my God, we met this benchmark. Kind of like I shared with you about the podcast. We made it to the charts. Hell, I don't even look at numbers. That was pretty crazy cool. That was pretty damn exciting. And you guys did that. I didn't do that. You guys did that. That's pretty cool. Thank you. Because you see, there's a past me living in the reality of 2013 who's wondering if she's ever going to get off that fucking rock. Who wonders if she's past her due date, her shelf life, the sell-by date. If she's wasted her entire life trying to heal, only to have missed the train. Oh yeah, I knew there were good transits and possibilities, but I'm freaking human. And they seemed a really long time away. And I seemed like I would be really old. Because we teach people that 50 is really old. I wasn't too old then, and I'm not too old now. And neither are you. Whether you're 25 or you're 30 or you're 35 or you're 40 or you're 45, these are the type of standards that Venus conjunct Pluto are at. She's asking you to reassess and change. Whether it's cultural beauty standards or ageism, those are all real up right now. You want to use filters and makeup? Use filters and makeup. You don't want to? Don't. You want to dress however you want to dress however you want to dress. Doesn't matter how you dress, as long as you feel good in it. Gender roles? Fuck society. Do what makes you comfortable and do what works for you and your family. We are changing as a society and as a culture, and this is happening everywhere. That's why more authoritarian governments are throwing the hammer down just because they have leaders with small dick syndrome. Oh, for all of you listening in other countries, God, I hope your leaders hear that. That's right. And I hope our leaders hear it. Your small dick energy rules the world. We need more women running things, and that means we cannot ask for permission anymore. Stop waiting for people to tap you on the fucking shoulder. Just goddamn do it. Boy, am I in a mood. I'm in a mood because the moon has slid into my third house. So here I am on my soapbox. Speaking of the moon in Capricorn is quickly approaching Venus. This will happen tonight because now we've moved to the 6th of December. And you'll be listening to this on the 6th of December. So it's going to be a really good time. Before you go to bed, just sit down and write out what kind of authority you want to have in your life and what it might look like and feel like. What does it look like and feel like to not ask for permission? What does it feel like to have security, like physical security? You've got a good place to live. You got a good, enough food in your belly. You can pay your rent. It's easy. You're making enough money. You don't feel beholden to anybody else. You don't have to ask for permission. There's a difference between having a discussion about something that impacts two people. Like if you have joint finances involved, that's a different story. But if it's something to do with your own autonomy, like, I'll never forget. This is going to get personal, but I think, the abortion debate is going to be up on this, and abortion rights is going to be up on this. And I've never hidden the fact that I've had abortions. I don't feel ashamed of it either. They were necessary for me. And in between my daughter and my son, I became pregnant. It was 3 months after I'd had my daughter. 3 months. My spinal cord was bruised. I couldn't feel part of my left leg. My daughter was a tiny baby. I had used every birth control known to man, but you know what? It wouldn't have mattered if I didn't, okay? But I did. Everything except the oral contraceptives because I was so sensitive and they just totally drove me like insane, so I couldn't use them. And I went to my doctor in Bahrain, and I've probably told this story on the podcast before because, again, I think it's important to talk about this as a real choice. I get tired of the SA argument and the rape argument and the what if arguments. You know what? It was shitty timing for me. Okay, forget I had physical issues. I had a 3-month-old. I had a 3-month-old who needed her mother's attention. She did not need me being pregnant, okay? She needed her mom. And so when I told my husband, because I needed to come to the States, I didn't ask him. I didn't ask. And I say, well, honey, what do you think? I said, no, I need to go to the States and have an abortion. I am not having this child. And he's like, don't I get an opinion? Don't I have a say? And yes, he did have an English accent, but a much deeper voice. And I said, no, you don't. And he said, but I'm your husband. And I was like, that's great. It's my body. When you can have the baby, you get a say. I had a 4.5-day labor with no drugs with the first one. Let me tell you, like hell, I was having another kid at that point. I'm surprised I even had my son, to be honest. If he hadn't have telepathically asked to be born, but that's another story for another day. It's a pretty great story, though. But yeah, so I chose. I exercised my choice. I didn't ask for permission. And a lot of people were shocked about that, even in America. I had friends, I had relatives. I didn't talk to old relatives, but I was really shocked at the people, even in my age group, were like, but you're married. What does your husband think? I'm like, what the fuck does that matter? Like, he's not birthing this. It's not impacting his body. It wasn't impacting him. It was impacting me. My body, my life. And I love my children with every bone in my body. I risked my life for them on more than one occasion. making a little bit of tea, just so you know. It was not a difficult decision. I'm not going to lie. It was not a difficult decision. It was a pretty damn easy decision. What was hard was fighting everybody else's opinions. We're going to see those debates come up. And honestly, I don't even think it should be a debate. We don't need to argue about what happens in the case of medical, what happens in the case of assault. Do you honestly think people in power give a fuck? They misuse their power all the time. We have to own our own authority and our own power and start voting these fuckers out and start running for office. I told you. Again, on tangents. I have a 9th house sun and 9th house Mercury. I do have pulpits, right? Pluto is opposite my sun, so I'm just going to be squirrely until 2024. You either like it or don't like it. You don't have to agree with me, and I thank you for listening. All right. So what do you do with your Venus in Capricorn transit? You get really fucking clear about what matters to you. Okay, you look at where you want to own your agency and you review how you've given it away and how you can reclaim it. And yeah, some of it's going to be gritty. Some of it will. Some of it will. Some of it will. That's why we have a Discord with our Patreon, because then we can discuss things and support one another. That's why I teach Cosmic Surfers. That's why I teach Living by Luna, so we can have these conversations, so I can answer questions, so we can work through things together. That's why I offer sessions. You can book them through the link in the description. I help people find their truth and their need. You know what? If you were making the decision and you asked me what you should do, I'd be turning that question right back on you and saying, I can't tell you what you should do. What feels right to you? And I would help you determine what felt right to you through a series of powerful questions with zero opinions of my own entered in. I know, because I've helped a lot of people make decisions, and it's been about 50-50 on the people. Let's just use abortion for an example. 50-50 on the amount of people I've helped make those decisions on which way they went, because ultimately it is their decision. I did not tell them my experiences. I just asked them questions, because it is a very personal thing. Now, we can sit and bitch and whine and moan about the people in power who are making these decisions. People in power don't give a fuck. They misuse their power all the time. And they cannot conceive what it is to be poor and disenfranchised any more than a poor and disenfranchised person can imagine what it is to be wealthy. I am very privileged. I have lived in all income brackets, all of them. I like the middle. The middle works for me. Broke sucks. Wealthy wasn't bad, but I was in such a privileged class when I lived in Bahrain. It was like living in a goldfish bowl. It was somewhat uncomfortable. I like the middle ground. The only reason I want to build an empire is so I can help other people build theirs. So I can help other people understand their power. So I can help people connect, so they can communicate and collaborate and play and make it through the next, God knows how long. 20 years, 30 years. It's going to be a while. It's better to just focus on what's right in front of us, though. That's why I don't do too many long-range predictions. I used to. It's kind of crazy making, because we can't really know exactly what's coming. Speaking of, I was asked a really great question about how do you know how people are expressing their energy if you don't meet them or you're not reading it face to face? And I thought I'd answer that question on the next segment. So, I had a really, really smart question asked by Shane in the Discord. And it was, if energy is expressing in a multitude of frequencies, how do you know which frequencies somebody is expressing? So, without if you haven't met them, and I think that's a really good question. And after further clarification, Shane said, "Hey, I'm talking about like reading public figures charts like Putin or Biden or something like that." So here's the deal: I am going to say you don't know what frequencies they're operating. I know people like to either sanctify or vilify people, but you're always looking through your own lens. So it's really, really important to understand. If you haven't met someone, all you can do is look at the public record and make your best assumption from there. And that takes an intrinsic knowledge of what the planetary meanings are and interpretations are, the aspects, the house placements, and then going, well, where are they going? And we only have public record for that. We don't know what they're like in private unless we've met them. And we may hold vastly different viewpoints. You cannot say someone is not connected to their soul. Even if you think they're evil, according to your own morality, their soul may be doing exactly what it contracted to do, which may look really immoral in this lifetime to you. We don't know. That's the answer. The universe doesn't see things in the same way as us, and our souls don't see things as the same way as us. And those frequencies, we don't know. But the soul will meet its agenda one way or the other. So that's how you know or you don't know. Another question was on interceptions. To talk about those a little bit. So intercepted signs are sandwiched. They're sandwiched in between a sign on the beginning of the house cusp and at the end beginning the next house. And it means that particular quality was not supported in your childhood. And these are activated by transits. Okay, so lunar transits, once a month, that area will get activated. Now, it may be that it's suddenly when you can operate there, it might become awarenesses, it could be happenstance. And if you have planets that are intercepted, especially your personal planets, this may be a time of the month where things just come into sharper focus, etc. Now, as an adult, you have agency, okay? And we also are... people who have intercepted planets, intercepted signs, may notice their progress charts a little bit more, a little bit younger. Okay? Just because, just through progression, your sun or your Mercury or your Venus or your Mars, your moon could be liberated from the interception. Because, if you've been repressed in a household and you weren't allowed to express yourself through progression, you'll see that might have been the year you gained a little bit more agency. These are great questions for cosmic surfers, okay? I don't go into depth in Coffee with Lori. It's a general Q&A for all patrons of all levels. The deeper stuff happens at Cosmic Surfers. Okay, Living by Luna is lunar related, and it's lunar transits. So deeper stuff when it comes to the moon, because the moon is causal. Now, the thing about intercepted signs is that if you have intercepted signs, you have intercepted houses. And so an entire house might be an area of life that went unsupported by family or the people around you. And that too is activated monthly by the moon. And then depending on what sign is on the house cusps, that gets activated by other transits. So there is that. I try to remember what else got asked at Coffee with Lori. Oh, somebody was asking about out of element aspects. So whether it's a conjunction or a trine or a square or a quincunx, or we can also call that an inconjunct, whatever, semi-square, there's so many different aspects. But anyway, sextiles, when they are out of element, they are not as strong. So let's say we have a trine, okay? For example, my Mars is trine my Sun out of element. It does not bear the same weight as an in-element trine, meaning I probably would have had less head trauma if my first house Mars was in Scorpio instead of Sag, because it's the out of element makes it just not communicate quite as well with the energy levels of my Sun. It's still there. There's some good saves. I have often been rescued, but it's a little more awkward in its expression. So I don't count those as a full out. I don't weigh those heavily. So I hope that is a good explanation for you. If you have more questions, feel free to ask them in the Discord. We now have a channel in the Discord for patrons for asking astrology questions, and I will answer those at Coffee with Lori once a month and here on the podcast every episode moving forward from here on out. I was being asked about the 12 universal laws and the planets. I talked a little bit about some of them. I think that's a great question. Venus is the law of attraction. Mars is about aligned action. And when you can put those two together, magic happens. We're going to be talking about that a whole lot more as we move through 2022, because there's some pretty amazing alignments of energy. That is stuff I will be teaching in the mystery school, because it's something I've worked on most of my life. I've been as out of alignment as a person can be, because I was cuckoo crazy for coconuts and Cocoa Puffs. And I say that with love. and I got to be whole and healthy and happy and beyond reasonably content. Life just gets richer and bolder and better, and I am amazed. Truly amazed at where life is and how glorious it can be, because a much younger me would have been very skeptical if I told them how life is today. And before I get emotional again, I promise I will write some astrological information to correspond. We'll do an astro guide on that. In fact, I'll write this down as soon as we end the podcast. So the Moon and Capricorn forecasts are up on Patreon. Make sure you read those. There's going to be some really interesting stuff happen overnight on Tuesday. We'll wake up on Wednesday to some very fascinating headlines. I think a lot of it will have to do with the Chinese economy. I think we're going to hear some more saber rattling with China, with Taiwan. I think we're going to see in China and India. I think we're also going to see some saber rattling between Russia and Ukraine, with Russia threatening to invade Ukraine. I really don't think any wars are going to happen. I think they're just saber rattling. And I say that as both an astrologer and a political analyst. There's a lot of posturing that goes on, and it's really more smoke and mirrors while they do something else. And it's probably monetary, it's probably investment related, and they're just, could probably deal with oil as well, because there's a bunch of oil fields in the Central Asia that are usually disputed. And so it's probably like a rope-a-dope politically. But it is late, and it is now after 1:11. I did see it. And so, go read your forecasts. Don't panic over anything. It's not worth panic. Take a deep breath. Know that you were born for these times. And pull your focus inside. Don't get freaked out by anybody else's bullshit. Focus on yours. We all have enough of our own, right? And we'll talk on the next episode. I'm sure there's quite a few more coming up. And many blessings. Thank you once again for listening. It's appreciated more than you know.